سخنرانی‌های گردهمایی جهانی ایران آزاد، قسمت ششم.
Thank you very much. It is for me a great honor to participate in this event together with such a distinguished list of speakers. We are here to discuss a topic which is of extreme importance from a political, social, and an economic perspective. Over the last millennia, and you can say this only for a handful of countries, Iran has been at the center of the world's cultural and economic development. And it is therefore particularly sad and upsetting and disturbing to see the Iranian people going through such a difficult period over the last decades. In my remarks, I will focus primarily on the Iranian economy because that's where my comparative advantage is. But let me underscore at the outset that the problems arising for the Iranian people from to use a euphemism, a disappointing performance of the Iranian economy, pale when compared to the issues related to freedom, to governance, to democracy that have been raised and highlighted by all the speakers that preceded it. But going to the Iranian economy, even if we leave aside what happened in 2020, the results, the developments have been affected by the COVID pandemic. Recent economic developments in Iran were very disappointing. Real GDP, real output, declined by some 13% during 2018 and 2019. Inflation soared to 35% and is currently close to 40%. The external current account surplus shrank to little more than zero in 2019, and it turned into a deficit in 2020 for the first time since 1998. The unemployment rate, officially at some 11%, is estimated by the Institute of International and Strategic Affairs of Paris to be twice as much. Over the last 2 years, poverty increased from 11 to 16%, adding 3.7 million people to the poverty roll. According to Bloomberg, the exchange rate against the US dollar depreciated by some 80% since early 2018 in the unregulated market. Over the last few decades, economic performance has been poor, with bouts of growth driven primarily by the oil sector. Perhaps a single number can summarize all this. Between 1980 and 2019, the average real per capita GDP growth rate, the average per capita real income growth rate has been just 0.2%, which is one of the lowest growth levels in the world during these 40 years. As a result of this, Iran lost grounds with respect to peer countries. In 1975, Iran's per capita income was almost 1/3 higher than Turkey's per capita income. 40 years later, Iran's per capita income is almost 1/3 lower than that of Turkey. All these results, of course, the Iranian regime blames all this on the sanctions, but it is not just the sanctions. All these results point at mistakes in domestic policies, lack of economic reform, and severe shortcomings in the economic governance framework. Finally, let me mention the results of the 2021 Economic Freedom Index of the Heritage Foundation. Altogether, Iran ranks 168 in the 168th position in the world. It is in the last position in the Middle East and North Africa region. Iran scores about 10% below average for regulatory efficiency, 17% below the world average for labor freedom. Allow me to open a short parenthesis here to mention some key issues relating to employment and unemployment, to the labor market. The first is the high level of unemployment among the young, some 28% even in the official statistics. Second, there is a surprising association between the level of education and unemployment. The unemployment rate for college-educated youth is particularly high. For men and women aged between 25 and 29, it is close to 35% for men and 45% for women, according to the 2016-17 census. More education. This means that more education is associated with higher unemployment. The third feature that I want to highlight about the labor market is the social exclusion of women. Labor participation just at 13%. Now let me go back to other aspects of the Economic Freedom Index of the Heritage Foundation. Iran is 23% below average for trade freedom, 33% below world average for government integrity, 40% below world average for property rights and judicial effectiveness, 45% below average for monetary freedom, 80% below the world average for financial freedom, and as much as 91% below the world average for investment freedom. These statistics, this data, this information lead us to a clear conclusion. Over the last decades, during the post-revolution period, the Iranian economy suffered from severe economic mismanagement, which added to the economic consequences of the political mismanagement that led to economic sanctions. This cannot last. This needs to be changed. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Madame Marian Rajavi, I agree you are future for free Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I am very glad that I can take part in such important like Free Iran Global Summit. For every country, human rights should be most important value. Over the past few decades, religion's dictatorship has destroyed Iran and brought war and terrorism in Middle East. While the Iranian youth are desperately needed to flourish the country's economy, they are in jail because they demand their basic human rights. Therefore, it is time for the international community to stand in solidarity with the Iranian people who are calling for freedom and democracy in order to rebuild their country and life in prosperity. The international community, and especially European Union, cannot remain silent in the face of such outrageous treatment of human rights defenders in Iran. The whole world should urgently call on the Iranian authorities to release those arrested for peaceful activities immediately. In my speech, I would like to draw attention to the very bad economic situation in Iran in connection with the action of Iranian authorities. Iran's economic situation is dramatic. It should be noted how negative actions of authorities influence on society. 60 million Iranians live on the poverty line and 30 million live in slums. We see large disproportion between men and women. In the COVID pandemic crisis, there are already 11 million unemployment. 6.5 million workers have lost their jobs. Iran's situation at the beginning of the third decade of 20th century is systematically deteriorating, and there are no indications that it will change for the better in the near future. Iran must be democracy, and I think about Iranian society, and now I am appeal for this. Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation for the speech.
Let me start by thanking you for the invitation to speak at this very timely and significant event. Your work and efforts, including the organisation of this year's Free Iran World Summit, are crucial as they help to draw attention to the many severe human rights violations perpetrated by the Iranian regime. Through its aggressive foreign policy, the Islamic Republic of Iran poses a serious threat to the Middle East and the international community in general, be it through its nuclear program or through its financial and logistical support for various terrorist groups, such as Hezbollah or the Houthis. The regime fuels instability in the region. On the domestic front, the Iranian regime has totalitarian control over all sectors of society and is guilty of countless human rights violations. For me, the undemocratic process and the election result are a clear sign, were it needed, that the ruling elite in Iran is primarily interested in perpetuating its own power, which happens at the expense of the Iranian population, a population that desperately seeks more freedoms and an end to tyranny. The regime is currently facing one of the most critical periods since it came to power. The country faces heavy international sanctions, while the economy is weakened, and more people in Iran express their dissatisfaction with the theocratic regime that is in place. The situation for ordinary Iranians is simply dire. Since 2018, the country has experienced nationwide uprisings and protests, and as we know, more than 75% of Iranians are forced to survive on average incomes which are below the international poverty line. The result unmistakably shows a profound alienation between the leadership and large parts of the population. The Iranian people want economic well-being. They want to live in a country that can maintain a good relationship with other nations. The course of the Iranian government has offered them the exact opposite of this, as its ideology, corruption and mismanagement has plunged the country into what is now an existential crisis. Of course, free and fair elections have never existed since the foundation of the Islamic Republic, but the recent election saw a gross abuse of the system as Raisi was designated as the next president. Mr. Raisi functions as a guarantor of the regime's survival. That is the purpose. He will help to further transform the Islamic Republic into a totalitarian system in which the hardliners dominate and continue to hold the levers of power. He has been intimately involved in the brutal practices of the regime over the years. He was instrumental in the officially denied mass executions of opponents of the regime at the end of the 1980s, as well as in the suppression of the protests in 2009. And as head of the judiciary, he was also involved in the persecution of dissidents until very recently. And as things stand, his election will most likely coincide with an aggravation or exacerbation of human rights abuses. So therefore, I fully understand and I absolutely share the various concerns that have emerged within the international community after the designation of Raisi. His selection represents a further obstacle to the normalisation of relations with Iran. His elevation will exacerbate domestic and regional problems since Iran is involved in one way or another throughout the Middle East in advancing ballistic missile programs, human rights abuses, and of course, supporting and financing terrorist and extremist activity. Overall, his designation has sent a clear signal to the world, which is not a positive one, neither for the Iranian people themselves, who struggle for more rights and freedoms, which are continuously denied, nor for the international community that seeks to normalise its relationship with Iran.
Madame la Présidente, chers amis, un vaccin a été trouvé contre le Covid. La démocratie américaine a chancelé de manière inédite, mais un président américain a fini par remplacer l'autre. Le changement climatique s'est imposé dans l'agenda international. Merkel va partir. Mais l'Iran officiel, elle, ne change pas. Un président désigné a remplacé un autre président désigné. Les mêmes cercles. Les protestations populaires restent inaudibles. On entend le Irak algérien, on se mobilise pour les Ouïghours, et même le Black Lives Matter, et a raison, a fini par attirer l'attention. Et le peuple iranien, lui, semble crier dans le vide. Et business as usual, on reprend les négociations sur le nucléaire. On ne réagit pas davantage à la désignation du nouveau président iranien. Je pense que la communauté internationale n'est pas naïve à l'égard de l'Iran. Elle n'ignore rien des violations des droits de l'homme. Elle sait tout du massacre de 1988. Amnesty dit tout chaque jour, et Amnesty a son siège à Londres. Il faut circuler dans les allées de l'exposition Ashraf III et voir les visages graves des fondateurs de l'Iran, croiser le regard de Rajavi, avoir le tournis devant les portraits de centaines de jeunes, de femmes, de sportifs assassinés par le régime, être bouleversé devant les photos de dizaines de fosses communes, reculer devant les photos glaçantes du massacre d'Ashraf en Irak, un massacre jusque dans les hôpitaux. Il faut aussi comprendre le prix élevé qu'ont payé ces combattants de la liberté. Voilà Ashraf III, lieu de mémoire et terre d'espérance, témoignage vivant de ce qu'est la répression et de la foi en l'avenir. Je ne crois pas non plus que la communauté internationale soit ignorante de l'existence d'une opposition crédible. Tout le monde connaît les mouyadjins du peuple, avec ses rassemblements géants dans toutes les capitales du monde et des milliers de participants. On connaît vos sacrifices, on connaît le prix élevé que vous avez payé pour un Iran libre et que vous continuez à payer. On connaît votre programme d'égalité homme-femme, on connaît votre programme de séparation de l'Église et de l'État. On a vu Ashraf, cette cité bâtie en moins de 2 ans, à partir de rien, des hôtels, des maisons, des hôpitaux, des écoles, des boulangeries, au milieu de nulle part, à 40 minutes de Tirana et de la côte adriatique. C'est une ville qui s'érige désormais, ce qui était seulement un champ de boue il y a quelques mois. Elle a vu le peuple aussi sortir des maisons, cette révolution, ou ce printemps, ces printemps perses. Il y en a tous les jours. Il fallait voir comment le monde, la communauté internationale a été prise de court devant les appels à la fin de la dictature qui se répandaient des tréfonds du pays. Ce n'est pas que le monde ou la communauté internationale ne savait pas, elle n'a juste pas voulu croire, elle n'a pas voulu voir. Il y a eu d'abord l'étonnement, puis il y a eu la sidération devant les foules qui sortaient dans les rues. Décidément, on a dit que ce n'était pas vraiment une révolution, mais une simple révolte, qu'il n'y avait pas de leader, que cette révolte ne durera pas, qu'elle était d'ailleurs incompréhensible, qu'il fallait se méfier. On a fait parler des Iraniens pour leur dire que, leur entendre dire leur méfiance vis-à-vis de cette révolte. D'autres ont souligné que cette révolte n'était pas politique, que c'est une bataille entre conservateurs, comme si les démocrates n'existaient pas en Iran. Bref, le monde ne veut pas voir les printemps perses. D'autres ont osé dire même que les Iraniens ne demandaient rien d'autre que manger, laissant de côté la liberté. Cette politique de l'autruche, au plus fort des protestations, dit beaucoup de l'aveuglement d'une communauté internationale qui non pas qui ne peut pas voir, mais qui ne veut pas voir, et qui a fait donc le pari du régime. Tout ça pourquoi ? Pour un accord nucléaire auquel je ne vois pas comment on peut croire. On les avait prévenus, cet accord ne mènerait à rien. Et dans un contexte en septembre, marqué par les horreurs commises par l'État islamique partout dans le monde, le temps est au pacifisme. Le temps n'est pas aux extrémismes et au radicalisme ou aux théocraties. C'est la liberté et la démocratie qui doivent nous guider, car elles seules sont porteuses de paix. La révolution iranienne y aspirait, mais le pouvoir de Khomeini l'a détourné de cette immense et belle ambition. Avec un pouvoir qui est fondamentaliste, la négociation est impossible. Il est donc temps pour la communauté internationale d'adopter une position ferme qui condamne les violations flagrantes des droits de l'homme en Iran, en particulier le nombre encore élevé d'exécutions, et en soumettant le commerce en Iran avec l'Iran à la fin des violations des droits de l'homme. Puissions-nous être plus nombreux, plus déterminés pour conduire cet indispensable changement, en soutenant le désir du peuple iranien pour le changement de régime et l'instauration d'une république laïque fondée sur la séparation de la religion et de l'État, l'égalité des genres et la liberté d'expression. Il en va de la morale et de la sécurité. Ici, nous ne sommes pas des doux rêveurs. Nous avons occupé les plus hautes fonctions. Nous savons ce que recèle la vie démocratique d'un État. Nous savons les contraintes de la diplomatie. Nous savons que ni Rome ni Téhéran ne se sont faites en un jour. Et nous voulons aussi que les entreprises s'enrichissent grâce aux contrats commerciaux. Mais ce qu'il faut, ce que nous savons aussi, c'est que nous n'obtiendrons rien de tout cela en baissant pavillon sur le front des droits de l'homme. Le sens de l'histoire est celui des droits humains. Il faut choisir le camp de l'humanité. Vous, ici, vous avez réveillé les consciences humaines, vous avez brisé les silences, vous avez cassé les indifférences, vous avez élevé le mot de justice, vous avez magnifié l'engagement. C'est un acte de foi absolument extraordinaire que vous exprimez chaque jour. Et ce qui s'est levé en Iran, à travers ces printemps perses, ne retombera pas. Nous y veillerons tous en vigie attentive et solidaire. Et la propagande ne fera pas oublier les raisins de la colère. Et donc, non, cibler Madame Rajavi ne suffira pas à effacer la puissance de cet appel à l'alternance démocratique. C'est pour la liberté que les Iraniens se sont soulevés, c'est pour leurs droits fondamentaux qu'ils se sont élevés, c'est contre les exactions de masse, contre l'arbitraire qu'ils ont risqué leur vie. C'est pour l'égalité des droits entre les hommes et les femmes qu'ils ont crié. Et c'est un changement de régime qu'ils réclament. Je vous remercie.
Merci. Je suis vraiment heureuse de vous voir et je vous remercie pour soutenir la résistance du peuple iranien et surtout la lutte des femmes iraniennes pour la liberté et la démocratie. Vos positions fermes contre ce régime montrent votre principe et votre engagement pour les droits de l'homme. Et je vous remercie et j'espère à très bientôt.
شب گردم و سوزانم، خشم فرو خورده ایرانم.
حاضر حاضر حاضر
بغض گلوگیر یتیمانم، حسرت یک سفره بینانم، نور شفق فام شهیدانم.
حاضر حاضر حاضر
جرأت بر همزن تقدیرم، موج پدید آور تغییرم، فصل براندازی زنجیرم.
حاضر حاضر حاضر
قله مغرور دماوندم، دامن در دامن البندم، برق پر از صورت شمشیرم.
حاضر حاضر حاضر
پیکارم، مرد و زن جنگم و عیارم، برش باروتم و رگبارم.
حاضر حاضر حاضر
بلبل انداز و شررناکم، سائق در دستم و بیباکم، شورش ایرانی بیدارم.
حاضر حاضر حاضر
مادر خون گشت جگر حاضر، روی پر از برف پدر حاضر، دیده خورشید به در حاضر.
حاضر حاضر حاضر
میهن تبعیدیم ای ایران، خانه خورشیدیم ای ایران، عشق تو و شوق خطر حاضر.
حاضر حاضر حاضر
پیکارم، مرد و زن جنگم و عیارم، برش باروتم و رگبارم.
حاضر حاضر حاضر
بلبل انداز و شررناکم، سائق در دستم و بیباکم، شورش ایرانی بیدارم.
حاضر حاضر حاضر
مادر خون گشت جگر حاضر، روی پر از برف پدر حاضر، دیده خورشید به در حاضر.
حاضر حاضر حاضر
میهن تبعیدیم ای ایران، خانه خورشیدیم ای ایران، عشق تو و شوق خطر حاضر.
حاضر حاضر حاضر
President-elect Madam Rajavi, people of Iran, honourable colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, our message today from the pre-Iran summit is one of solidarity and support for the millions of Iranians who had enough of the religious dictatorship that has denied them their most fundamental rights and freedoms. Another important message highlighted during this summit is the urgent matter of justice and accountability. I join the other speakers in support of the Iranian people's demand for justice and call on the Irish government and the EU to use their prominent voice at the UN to demand an independent UN investigation into the 1988 massacre of 30,000 political prisoners in Iran, especially as one of the main perpetrators, Ra'isi, is set to become president in Iran. Just last week, we saw a new wave of protests across Iran with popular chants of death to Khamenei, death to the dictator, following continuous power outages in the country. This is another reminder that the regime does not have the best of its people on its agenda, but rather invest billions of dollars from the country's wealth in a clandestine nuclear program, and it is certainly destabilising activities in the region. And by appointing Ra'isi as the next president, the supreme leader signals that the dictatorship will continue to press full ahead as the same unacceptable path, ruling with repression, terrorism and advancing a nuclear program that has no civilian use. This shows that the regime in Iran cannot be trusted with dialogue and sanction relief, and the only way forward is to stand firm and pressure Tehran to abandon its unacceptable behaviour. However, today, at this summit, we have seen and heard that there exists another alternative to the regime, a democratic alternative that sets the priorities and aspirations of the Iranian people first, a democratic alternative that wants Iran to live in peace with its neighbours and cooperate with the outside world. This democratic alternative is represented by the National Council of Resistance, the NCRI, and stipulated in the 10-point plan of the NCRI President-elect Madame Rajaveh, and it is clearly demonstrated during the 3-day Free Iran Summit. It has strong support among Iranians and international recognition, which demolishes the often repeated claim by the regime that the democratic opposition is finished and has no popular support. It is now time for the EU and European leaders, including our own leaders, and indeed our own Foreign Minister, Minister Coveney, who currently sits on the UN, to accept this reality and admit that the best way forward is to stand with the Iranian people and the NCRI for a free and democratic Iran. Yes, stand on the side of millions, not the mullahs. I'm delighted to be involved in this very important conference. I really am impressed with the massive array of impressive speakers, and I congratulate everybody involved. Thank you very much indeed.
Dear Madame Rajavi, dear friends from Iran, dear friends from around the world, I have been privileged to get to know and work with my friends from Iran and all of you in the great cause of freedom. Nothing is more important in life than freedom. Thank you for giving me the chance once more to address this extraordinary international conference from across the globe. Iran is a country of great history and should be the country of Iranians that want to live in peace and freedom. I should congratulate every Iranian, people and resistance for organizing such a great gathering. The Iranian people and resistance is a history of almost half of the century, protesting, resisting, and sacrificing for their country and freedom. We have seen it in 1999, 2011, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and more than 1,500 people were killed during November 2019 popular protest. First, I believe we should be united in condemning all these brutal atrocities of the Iran regime against Iranian people and MEK. But I don't believe this is enough. Second, we should not just say great words about sacrifice of Iranian people, but we should be united and have discussions in our parliament, Congress, and we should push our governments to stand strong against brutal atrocities of the regime. As Albanians, we have tried to do our part, and we are still doing our part, not just host our friends from Iran, but stand firm in policy against terrorism. We did expel the Iranian regime ambassador in Albania, together with 3 other diplomats in December 2018, for their engagement in terrorist plot against MEK in Tirana. I believe that all agents and mercenaries of the Iranian regime, intelligence, security agencies should be expelled from Albania and the rest of Europe. On April 2021, US Congress supported the resolution number 118 that was a support for Iranian people's desire for democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran, and condemns violation of human rights, the state-sponsored terrorism by the Iranian government. The resolution also supports the 10-point plan of Madame Rajavi, NCRI President for Free Iran. Thanks to American congressmen, the resolution praised positive and important steps of Albanian government, expelling multiple Iranian diplomats in response to news that the regime had also employed terrorist activities against members of MEK in Albania. We should work on the same resolutions in our parliaments and the European Parliament as well. Recently, Iran at so-called elections. They elected a president, Raisi, that is accused for mass murder and crime against humanity. It makes more obvious the Iran regime will not stop being against its own people and threat to the rest of the world. Amnesty International in 2021, June 19, said that Raisi has risen to the presidency instead of being investigated for the crimes against humanity of murder, enforced disappearance, and torture. Is a grim reminder that impunity reigns supreme in Iran. As a chairman of the Republican Party of Albania, I do support NCRI as the alternative to the regime to bring about peace and freedom in Iran. The 10 points plan of Madam Rajavi, the president-elect of the Nation Council of Resistance of Iran for democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran is the way for free Iran. Once more, thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Mr. Faطmیر, Medio, I'm very glad to see you. The Mujahideen and residents of Ashraf Tree are also happy to see you. The Iranian people will never forget how the Albanian people welcomed the members of the Iranian resistance and stood firm against Iranian regime. Thank you very much.
Dear Ms. Rajavi, distinguished guests, dear Iranian friends and all over the world, it is a pleasure to take part in this very important summit for democracy and freedom attended by so many international personalities and thousands of Iranians. Freedom and democracy is a fundamental, a universal right, and the people of Iran deserve it. They deserve human rights, justice, and the states of law. Freedom means also dignity, work, and health. Freedom means peace, integration with the other peoples, to be open to the world without any prejudice, discrimination, regardless of race, gender, or the religion, the geographic position, etc. A life that Iranian needs to enjoy. They suffer from the misuse of religion, from oppression of the people, poverty, corruption of the government, and many more. So I fully understand why they want democracy, because democracy, it is fundamental for the development, for the stability, for the country, and also for the so complicated Middle East region. So it is necessary to avoid the extremism. Fundamentalism not only deform the democracy, but do more, create a basis for radicalism and terrorism at the moment in which we need to create the condition for a peaceful cohabitation between the peoples for the prosperity. Only the democracy can be the guarantee for this. And in our world, there is only one model of democracy, based over the freedom, equality, human rights, diversity, free votes for all. This is why I give you my solidarity and stand with you on the right side of the history in your quest for democracy and equality. I wish you the best and a successful summit. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Dear Mariam, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, allow me to start by congratulating the organizers with this important and special event to express support for the Iranian people's desire for a democratic, secular, prosperous, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran, and to condemn violations of human rights and state-sponsored terrorism. From the beginning, I would like to align with the bipartisan resolution 118 sponsored by the majority members of the US Congress, announced on April 27th of this year. On the other side, Albania fully aligns with the EU, NATO, Council of Europe, and IAEA positions of the issues of democracy, human rights, international and nuclear security related to Iran. Well, Albania firmly believes and remains committed to the safeguard and promotion of the democratic principles and values. It has always been standing by them who seek and fight for tolerance, democracy, and human rights, which for us represents the foundation of peace, but also the foundation of our unconditional support in the fight against terrorism and all forms of fundamentalism. As you know, from 2013, Albania is hosting a number of Iranian dissidents. At that time, I used to be Minister of Defense of my country. Talking about their presence in our country, Albanian Prime Minister Rama clarified to reporters in Vienna, where he has to speak before the OSCE Permanent Council in his capacity as head of the organization, that this is a topic and an issue that it's not new to us in relations to Iran. We have taken an action that honors Albania in line with the Albanian tradition in the walk of a non-negotiable strategic alliance with the United States to welcome or open the doors to a group of people whose life is at risk or used to be at risk at that time. We're very proud to have helped these people like we helped the Jews during the Second World War, with no interest of hiding agenda, but offering shelter when many others turned their backs on them. This is why we are how, and this is how we see it, always. On the other hand, the Albanian government and all the Albanian political spectrum has expressed dismay over the Iranian hostile and malicious stance and activities towards and within the territory of Albania. For 2 decades, Albania remains firm in its commitment alongside NATO, US, and other partner countries in the fight against international terrorism and any act that endangers world stability and peace. In several cases, the Albanian authorities have identified and prevent dangerous activities organized by members linked with the Iranian terrorist groups. So in December 2019, Iran's ambassador to Albania and one of more embassy diplomats were expelled from our country as persona non grata. The Foreign Ministry reported at that time that the 2 Iranian diplomats were declared unwanted after being suspected of being involved in activities that threaten security of our country. So the decision to declare Iranian diplomats undesirable from the Ministry and of Foreign Affairs were further clarified, like a decision that has been taken in consultation with the allied countries because of their activity in Albania was violating their diplomatic status, and not only. Ladies and gentlemen, in January 2020, the government of Albania expelled these another two other Iranian diplomats, also planning terrorist attacks against MEC. Well, what to say more? I think that we in Albania and Albania in general have always been a shining example of tolerance and religious coexistence, where people respect each other as equals, regardless of faith and cultural background. We do have more than 3 main religions in our country, and we know how to live all together and to survive as Albanians know how to do so. We strongly believe that strengthening and promoting these values is a concrete effort to protect our society and to preserve our social cohesion but also to clarify the difference between radicalism and extremism, which has nothing to do with religion. So to counter terrorist and extremist ideas, their philosophy, their political project, and defeat them, we must fight the roots of extremism, the poverty, the social injustice, and the imposed ignorance and the intolerance, and of course the exclusion and the discrimination. That's what was happening in Iran, actually. I think that furthermore, Albania's election for the first time as temporary member of the United Nations Security Council commits us to defending human rights and to the international rights as a country whose history has taught more than once that human rights and the international rights are the inevitable pillars of the platform that builds better societies and human rights protection without any discrimination. Definitely also promotes stronger cooperation among nations. So let's give to peace another chance, and we are all hazard. Thank you for your time.
To congratulate you all for organizing such an amazing international event so that the voice of the Iranian people is heard all over the world. I truly appreciate the work of Madame Rajavi and MEC, the team, all of you that have worked for this, that are fighting every single day for freedom, for democracy, human rights of the Iranian people. And I'm very proud that Albania has become a shelter for the Iranian opposition and for the people that have suffered and have stood up to the regime that has captured the state of Iran. They are a great alternative, I think, for Iran's future, so we are supporting them here in Albania. What is happening in Iran is absolutely unacceptable, and for the international community, this should be more cautious. And all of us should turn their attention towards the people of Iran. The economic situation is quite a concern too, and this can have a lot of consequences, so no gaps should be left between the West and Iran. I would like to congratulate you again for mobilizing the whole world here today to turn the eyes on your own country, trying to give to all of us the true picture of what is going on in Iran. And I wish you a lot of success, and I want to reassure you that Albania will always be a great supporter of the Iranian people. Thank you very much for your attention.
Dear Madam Rajavi, dear participants, it's a pleasure for me to address this extraordinary international conference from across the globe. I should congratulate the Iranian people and resistance for organizing such a magnificent gathering. Albania has always been in support of those who were suppressed by the dictatorial regime in Iran. We express our deep concerns about ongoing human rights violations in Iran and thousands of executions during the years, including the massacre of political prisoners in 1988. The Iranian people and resistance have been protesting and struggling more than 40 years in widespread uprising of 1999, 2011, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2010. According to the US State Department, more than 1,500 people were killed during November 2019 popular protests. We condemn all these brutal atrocities and killings of innocent people. As part of Albania's foreign policy against terrorism, our government expelled the Iranian ambassador in Albania, as well as 3 diplomats of the Iranian embassy for their engagements in terrorist plots against Mujahideen in Tirana in December 2018. The expulsion of the Iranian ambassador and diplomats by our authorities is an important step which sends the right message that no Iranian embassies should be used for plotting terror and conducting spying activities against dissidents. We will support similar actions in the future if needed. On February 4, 2021, Belgium court sentenced Iran's diplomat in Vienna, Asadollah Assadi, to the maximum sentence of 20 years imprisonment for his role in planning to plant a bomb at the Free Iran gathering in 2018, and his 3 accomplices were given jail terms of 15 to 18 years and stripped of their Belgian citizenship. On 27 April 2021, the majority members of US Congress supported the resolution number 118, expressing support for the Iran people's desire for a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran, and condemning violation on human rights and state-sponsored terrorism by the Iranian government. The Iranian people boycotted the presidential elections on 18th of June 2021. As Madam Rajavi stated, the installing of new president reflects the regime desperation, foreshadows the overthrow of the ruling theocracy. Members of the Albanian parliament from Democratic Party of Albania support National Council of Resistance of Iran as the legitimate alternative to bring about peace and freedom in Iran. We support the 10 points plan platform of Madam Miriam Rajavi, the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, for democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention.